Welcome to Art with Mrs. PM. Let's start. What we're going to need today is a Sharpie or a black marker, a piece of paper, and some watercolor. Now your watercolor might look a little different than mine. That's okay, but I'm going to use my watercolor here. So with our paper, our lesson today is about lines. So we're going to start at the bottom of our paper and we're just going to start to make some different lines and try and turn this into a landscape. So first I'm going to start with maybe a wiggly horizontal line. And we talked about horizontal and vertical lines. So I'm just going to do a wavy horizontal line. Now remember to make your artwork your own. If you don't want to start with a wavy horizontal line, you don't have to. But we're going to keep going horizontally across the page, left to right, as we make our artwork. Now I'm going to do some vertical lines. I'm going to do them all different heights. Now you can do any type of lines. We're going to go about halfway up our page, maybe 3/4 up our page, with just some fun lines. Maybe just a third up, I don't know. Sometimes when I create, I try to let go of the expectation I have for the outcome and just enjoy the journey. In our lesson today, we talked about integrity and how it's important to have integrity in all that we do. And the way we do things matter. So if we create artwork really angrily and upset, I think that might make the art change a little bit. I'm just gonna do some more lines, cloud-like lines, super wavy lines. This is almost like a fluffy line. I think I'm gonna do a dotted line. I'm going to make some swirly lines. And then I'm going to do, what can I do next? Maybe swirling the other way. Then I'm going to start to make little hills. So from here, I'm going to cut off an area and close an area here. And I'm going to do a bunch of lines in there. And then I'm going to enclose an area in there and do some lines in there. Then I'm going to close an area here. All right. So I have my foreground, my middle ground, and we're going to go into the background. And we'll talk about that more in detail as the art course goes on. So still continuing with my lines, I think with this line, I'm going to start to do a bunch of almost diagonal lines. Going back and forth, following that same line. Now if you watch, when I draw lines, I try not to draw with my hand. Sometimes that happens. I try and draw from the wrist. I try not to draw from the wrist, but to draw with the hand, because our hand makes a lot straighter lines than with our wrist. I'm going to follow that line up on top. I'm kind of just making a pattern with these lines. Another word we'll talk about as the year goes on. Wow, that got complicated real quickly. So I'm going to color in opposite, alternating, going back and forth, switching. I'm going to color them in black. and it's gonna look like a checkered board. You do not have to do this. You can just continue this pattern up in your different hills. We're just making a landscape out of lines. And the reason I chose a landscape with integrity is because the work we do, and when I think of work, sometimes I think of good outdoor farm labor. Working outdoors, tilling the ground, because I think that's work that really can represent what you put into it, you get out of it. So if you work really hard growing something, you'll get a nice crop that will come out of it. But it works in other areas too, and that's why it makes a good metaphor. So at school, if you work really hard and put a lot of effort into school, you'll reap, or reap just means produce, good grades. Just like a farmer who works really hard on the fields and takes care of his fields gets healthy plants and crops. So most every time I do this checkered style, I mess up. And so I'm just gonna give myself some grace if I mess up on this checkered style, because that is my tendency to lose myself in the abstraction. But do you see how I just created this out of lines? I did a bunch of vertical lines, and then I did some horizontal lines, and I have this cool checkered. This is where I start to get really confused. All right, so those are some fun lines. All right, so for this, let's see. I'm just gonna do a bunch of lines off one big line. Kind of looks like a tree. Make that a little thicker. Cool. Now over here, let's see. What type of line do I want to do here? Maybe from this point. Well, I kind of already did that there. I do some hatched lines. What do I want to do? I'm gonna make a really thick line. And maybe I'll make some Make another really thick line. Ooh, you know what we need? I feel like we need some zigzag lines. Maybe I'll add some zigzags in here. So what I'm kind of doing, and how I like to sometimes create, is I'm just looking at the whole and seeing where we need to add some. So I would like to add a sun in here. Now I could do a sun off the mountain. I could do a sun up here. Oh, I think off the mountain could be cool. Might do it on this side. So I did a sun off the mountain. Now I'm gonna do some really, I think I'm gonna do lines in here. I might do these different colors for the sun when we come in and color it. We're kind of essentially making our own coloring sheet. Not quite sure how this is gonna look. So I'm kind of creating space. So I'm making this line go behind that line to create some space. All right, cool. So once you finish your drawing with your lines, we created a landscape. What we do matters. How we do things is what fruit we produce. We're gonna come in and paint. So if you're using watercolor paper, oh gosh, I ruined this paintbrush, that makes me sad. If you're using watercolor paper, you can go ahead and get your paper wet first, but if you're using computer paper or the art paper that came in your supply, I don't recommend getting it wet first because it's really thin. So you're just gonna start somewhere. I'm gonna start with my sun. And you can just watercolor or use markers in the different places. So the cool thing about the watercolor though is that you can kind of go right over your lines and it doesn't totally discredit those lines. Like you can still kind of see them. Ooh, I just got it. So with this paper though, because I'm not using watercolor paper, you don't want to get it super wet. Unfortunately, you can't because it will start to fall apart a little bit. And so you just want to be very careful with how much water you add. That's why if you really like watercolor, I really recommend buying some watercolor paper because it makes it so much more fun and the colors show up so much more when you have that absorbent watercolor paper. All right, let's see. I think I want to do some blue in here. Oh, it's kind of like purple. And I did blue on top of these lines. It made it look like water. Which is kind of fun. Did not think that when I was first creating, but I saw that as I started to paint. Like, ooh, that Hey, you guys remember Mrs. Gratz? She gave me all of her watercolors. Let's see if we can borrow from her. Here. Oh, she's got lots. Yes. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna do some of this color. This is a yellow color. I'm thinking about adding it in here. So see how I got it a little thick here? That with watercolor, that's really easy to fix because you just start to spread it out. You can add a little bit more water to it to spread it out. But unfortunately, you can't add as much water as you may if this was watercolor paper. So, there we go. Next, I think I might do another green, but I'm gonna do this bluish green. And remember that you can color your artwork however you want to. That art is a place in school where you get to make your own choices. And that's really cool, right? Like you get to make your own choices. Most of the time in school, you're having people tell you how to do it, and what to do, and how many words, and what your argument should be. But here in art, you get to make those choices. And that's something that I really appreciate and love about art is that creativity, that you get to make these choices for yourself. Trying to think. So this will all be one color. I'm not sure I like this, but I think I'm gonna go with this. Purplish color. So I'm going to talk a little bit about shadowing with watercolor here, getting all these bonuses. So the more pigment you add, the darker the color will be. When you shadow, when you add a tint or a shade with watercolor, you start to add more water. So I'm making it pretty dark right in here. And then I'm going to come in and start to add more and more water as I get up to the top. And that is going to create this idea that the sun is peeping up over, shining bright on this, this mountain up here. It would do it a lot better if I wasn't using cheap paper. All right, for the center one, honestly, I don't really know what I want to do. What color? Purple, blue, maybe yellow, orange. So I'm gonna come back to it. I'm gonna do my sky next. So I want my sky to be a really light blue. So I'm gonna add as much water as I can to this. And try and find the perfect balance to water. See how that was too much water? That's too much color. So I often have you cover your whole page with your awesome artwork. And a great way to do that is to use watercolor. See how much quicker you can go than with markers? If you're using markers, no worries. It just might take you a little bit longer. All right. Still don't know what color I want to do, but I know I want to come in with the sun. Just so much better with more pigment. But that doesn't mean, I'm just thinking out loud. I got a little sloppy there. It's okay. Lost Sun color. So something I didn't really talk about is to plan how you paint things. I'm having to compensate a little bit because I didn't plan through it. I don't want to rest my hand on my wet paper. So all right, so now I have that middle one again. I'm thinking like a dark purple. This one, or this one. On my name. Okay, so something you can do to take your art to the next level is then to go back and do your lines again over top the watercolor where you may have just gone a little too that will just emphasize these lines again because they got a little dulled out from the color. This one looks good. This top one might need a little oomph. You definitely want to wait till this dries. Oh, that's fun. I like that.